Tesla. I mean, it's one of the most innovative and valuable companies on the entire planet. The brand is basically synonymous with the future, right? But that incredible success was forged under some seriously immense pressure. So, what does it actually take to build that future? And more importantly, who pays the price?
That's not some critic's description. That is a direct quote from the CEO, Elon Musk himself. He's the one who coined the term manufacturing hell to describe the extreme, just relentless push to scale production, especially for the Model 3. It was framed as a mission, a sprint, almost like a war against the limits of manufacturing.
And that, right there, is the central question we're digging into. When a company's whole culture is defined by production at all costs, what actually happens to the people on the factory floor? We're going to break down what the record shows, from court documents all the way to worker testimony.
So to start, we really have to look at where the line was crossed, from just being a demanding workplace to being a flat-out illegal one. Because according to multiple lawsuits and government agencies, Tesla's culture didn't just bend the rules, it broke the law.
Yeah, court records from the Fremont factory paint a pretty disturbing picture. And these weren't just isolated incidents. They detail allegations of routine racial slurs on the assembly line, racist graffiti like swastika scrawled in bathrooms, and this consistent pattern of supervisors who allegedly just ignored or dismissed complaints. And beyond the harassment, California regulators also cited the company multiple times for some really critical safety violations.
To really get the human impact, you have to hear from the people who lived it. Owen Diaz was a former elevator operator who sued Tesla for the racial harassment he went through. In his testimony, it wasn't about some abstract legal theory. It was about the deep, personal humiliation he felt every single day. He told the court that the abuse strained his relationships and made him question his own worth.
And wow, the initial jury verdict in his case was just staggering. They awarded him $137 million. That's a number that was meant to punish Tesla for what the jury saw as severe and malicious conduct. Now that amount was later reduced, and the case eventually settled confidentially. But that initial verdict, it sent a really powerful message about just how severe the illegal behavior was.
But here's what's really interesting, and frankly, a lot more disturbing. It isn't just about what broke the law. It's this much larger gray zone of management practices that cause deep psychological harm, but they aren't always illegal. This is where the core of that production hell culture really lives. So what are we talking about here? Well, it's often described as fear-based management. It's a leadership style that really hinges on intimidation, on public pressure, and this constant underlying threat that if you can't keep up, you are out. It's all about driving results through anxiety, not through inspiration.
Now this slide here really illustrates the difference perfectly. Elon Musk talks about a hardcore mission, and a lot of employees join Tesla because they believe in it. But what workers have described is a culture that kind of warped that mission. It stopped being about the pride of a shared goal and became about the daily fear of not meeting a quota and getting fired. This quote from a former worker just perfectly captures that feeling. The pressure wasn't temporary, like during a big production ramp. It was the everyday state of being. That constant lack of security wasn't some bug in the system. It was a management tool.
And what's the result of that constant pressure? Well, dehumanization. Another former worker described how the intense focus on output and speed just strips away your identity. You stop being a person with skills and you become just another component on the assembly line, measured only by your output.
And this is the end result. The emotional and the psychological toll. A former employee shared this, and it shows how a job that started with pride and purpose ended in burnout and despair. This is the real human cost of that gray zone. So how is this kind of culture maintained? Well, testimonies describe some very specific tactics. Managers allegedly yelling at workers right in front of their peers. Production targets that were constantly being raised, making sure you never really felt successful. And maybe most importantly, these subtle forms of retaliation for speaking up, like losing shifts or being labeled not a team player. Tactics that are, believe it or not, often perfectly legal. So this brings us to a really crucial question. Are these just stories of a few bad managers, or do they point to something deeper, something systemic, baked into the company's DNA? The timeline of events really seems to suggest an answer.
I mean, when you look at this timeline, it's pretty hard to see these as just isolated events.
The U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC, they allege the harassment pattern began way back around 2015. And then you see this cascade of major lawsuits over the next decade, from individuals, from the state of California, and from the federal government itself, a case that was still unresolved as of early 2026. This really suggests a recurring problem.
And evidence suggests this cultural tone was set from the very top. In a 2017 email to employees that was later cited in a lawsuit, Elon Musk wrote that workers should be thick-skinned. Now, critics argue this kind of philosophy prioritizes enduring bad behavior over holding people accountable for it, which in turn creates an environment where abuse can just keep persisting. And this is the central conflict, right? On one hand, Tesla has consistently stated that it does not tolerate harassment and takes all complaints seriously. But on the other hand, that official stance is directly contradicted by lawsuits from both state and federal civil rights agencies, which allege the problem is systemic, it's routine, and it's been going on for years.
So this brings us to our conclusion, and it really gets at the heart of this entire story. It's about the massive gap between what is legally required and what is ethically responsible.
Because here's the really uncomfortable truth. A lot of the damaging, fear-based behavior we've been talking about is perfectly legal. Our legal system is often designed to protect companies from lawsuits, not necessarily to protect employees from burnout, humiliation, and psychological harm. And there's a huge gap there.
And this, right here, is the single most important takeaway from all of this. The illegal acts of racism are absolutely horrifying, of course, but the most troubling part of this whole story is the culture of fear and pressure that was allowed to thrive. A culture that didn't have to break the law to break people. So we're left with this question. And it's not just for Tesla, but for every single high-pressure workplace out there. In the relentless drive for innovation and production, how do we define the line between demanding high performance and enabling abuse? It's a question we all need to be asking.